there everyone, you join me at the lovely Bruichladdich distillery on the island of Islay for Fèis 2023. The distillery, as you imagine, super popular throughout the year, especially during Fèis. So unfortunately, not anybody to join me today. However, I do still have the pleasure of trying their Fèis release. So Bruichladdich is a fantastic distillery, and the interesting thing is that they have three distinct characters of spirit. So we have Bruichladdich, which is unpeated, Port Charlotte, which is heavily peated, and also Octomore, which is super, almost scarily peated. This first one we're going to try is the Bruichladdich with the iconic kind of teal turquoise design to it. This particular expression is one of only 2,500 bottles, aged for 16 years in a combination of bourbon and sauternes casks. From my experience of Bruichladdich, it's just always a solid dram. It's a real taste of Islay without the huge amount of peat, which sounds a little bit of a contradiction, but you get that lovely kind of Atlantic sea spray characteristics coming through. Sauternes casks add a lovely sweetness to it. Sauternes is a sweet dessert wine. So if you've heard of, for example, Chateau d'Yquem, it's probably the most sought after dessert wine. So yeah, expecting interesting things with this one. So without further ado, I'll crack it open and see what it's all about. Right, let's give this a try. Right, now then, let's have a look at this. So in terms of the colour, it is quite light for a 16-year-old single malt. I think with there not being any sherry influence in there, you wouldn't be expecting any sort of dark mahogany characteristics to the colour. We'll give this a quick nose. Yeah, very fresh actually. I think a lot of people associate Islay with quite kind of heavy, quite coastal, almost quite dirty characteristics. This is very clean, quite sweet as well. Very kind of appealing. The strength of this one is at 50% ABV. So it does pack a little bit of a punch, but on the nose for me, it isn't overwhelming. I think if they'd watered it down to, 43, 46%, it might be a little bit bland and a bit flat, but very lively on the nose, a slight kind of salinity in there as well. You can tell it's a whiskey that's made next to the sea, but yeah, very appealing on the nose. So I'll give this a little taste. Slange, everybody at home. Straight away, it's a very obvious Bruichladdich characteristic. You've got obviously the strength coming through, but it is that, as I say, lovely sort of coastal influence. The influence from the Sauternes cask, I would say, is a little bit, it's not as upfront as I was expecting. Maybe comes through a little bit on the finish. The finish isn't harsh, there's not really much burn, so perhaps the sweetness from the Sauternes cask helped mellow it out a little bit. I think for those who are familiar with the classic Laddie or the Laddie 10, this one has had an extra bit of maturation, so it's generally just a bit more kind of rounded out, a bit smoother, a bit more mellow. But it's fantastic. It's very hard to find a bad Bruichladdich, I think, and this is a very solid example. Limited, as I say, to 2,500 bottles. It's a nice option to have if you are visiting the island for Fèis. It's not the cheapest bottle of whiskey in the world. I think it's pushing £150. And I think for that money, for me, there's, bigger whiskies, more kind of interesting whiskies. This is a step up from the Laddie 10, but for me, it doesn't justify the £100 bump up in price. But overall, a very nice whiskey. Amazing to taste it, but probably not one I'm going to be taking home with me to the mainland.